our conversation, and I just want to again say I'm Kristen Sakota. I'm director of the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, and I am so honored to be here today and to really be in community with ARRAY, with the Art for Justice Fund, with our incredible conversation and artists, and with all of you. So, as we step into this, I was thinking over the last few days about the conversation we're going to have, and wanted to take a moment for us to all kind of reflect a bit on the notion of space, on the notion of place, on the built environment, on the land. And I want to first recognize that we are all on the land of our native and indigenous communities, the ancestral and unceded lands. And here in Los Angeles, that might include tribes such as the Tongva, the Chumash, the Gabrielino, the Quiche. And they are still here, and they're committed to lifting up their stories and their culture. But I was also thinking about what is my lived experience of space? What are the lenses I bring to it? I'm a mother, right? I walked into this space today. How did it make me feel? I'm also a lawyer. I understand that the laws have defined whether I own a space, what my rights are in space, whether I owe somebody for the space. I'm also a dancer, so I've made my art about bodies moving in space, about the negative space and the relationship between bodies in space. And in art that is often presented in stages and in places with architecture so grand, but maybe it doesn't make all my people feel that they are welcome there. And I also know that I am a Black woman, and that not every space I enter is safe for me to be there, and that is true for my entire lineage. So what are we going to talk about space? We all can reflect on that, and I'm so excited that we get to hear from two visionaries in a room of visionaries to share with us their work in architecture, in the built environment, and thinking about how does space translate into, reflect, or respond to the need for social justice. So with that, and one other final little point of privilege, she's going to be like, why did you guys have to do it? But I have to acknowledge that from the Department of Arts and Culture, I also do have one of our appointed arts commissioners is with us today, and that is Commissioner Colors, Ms. Patrice Colors. I have to acknowledge. These arts resources out in the community. Okay, so exciting. We're going to start with you, Damar. And before we get into what the work is, what the exhibit is, let's just learn a bit more about who you are. So just can you tell us a bit about who you are as a person or your journey? Like, how did you get here today?
So my name is Damar Matthews. I'm an architect. I got here by car. My work is really focused in, sorry, can I just dive in?
Yes, okay.
My work is really focused in the development of a Black architecture. And when we speak about space and how some people feel in one space compared to another group of people, you can look at areas across LA, for example, Koreatown, Chinatown, Little Bangladesh, Little Armenia. You can look at all these places where cultures were able to bring traditions, values, and basically a building tradition to their areas, so their culture kind of carries on, and they're represented in the built environment in a very royal or grand way. And when you look at, there's signals and there's identifiers in each of these areas. And for a Black neighborhood, I'm not gonna say it, I'll let all of you kind of imagine, but what are your identifiers that you're in a Black neighborhood in LA? Is it something that's going to instill pride? Are you looking at colors? Are you looking at textures? Are you looking at, materials? And what are your thoughts when you go into a neighborhood that is predominantly Black? Are you getting out of your car? Are you feeling safe? How do the people there feel? And that's kind of where my work begins or takes off. I don't want to speak too heavily. I'll give you a pass. What you're doing is what.
Amazing, thank you. Deanna, tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Damar, what you were saying. I really kind of have to use some of that because it's good. It's true. So I can speak maybe more personally. I don't know. I'm old and stuff these days, so not a lot. I was counting. I was like 20 years. Before I started any of this work, for 20 years, I studied and practiced architecture almost the entire time as the only black woman in the room, sometimes the only woman in the room. I've worked in many countries all over the world, working for some of the wealthiest people in the world, truly some of the wealthiest people in the world. And I think a couple things happened for me. One, I got sick of being the only black person in the room, and I got sick of having no clients that looked like me or any people or who had anything to do with my background. And then I think I also was seeing, because of that, what I saw was gross disparities in the built environment all over the world, not just in our black communities here, but everywhere I went. Hovels, people working on my projects, living in squalor. Clients saying, "Oh, we'll just build a new housing development here." I'm like, "Well, where are these people going to go?" And there was no critique, there was no commentary. I was repeatedly told that, "Well, we don't ask those questions, Deanna. We're architects. We just do what the client tells us to do." And so after 20 years of that, I came back to the US and I started to see that there was another way that people could practice. I started to see something called the public interest design movement. I also saw that being led by mostly white men, but I did see it as a way out, right? A way to begin to practice the way that I wanted to practice. I also went through a very personal journey during that time, a sort of inner healing work. I've done a lot of work on myself. I always say that my personal growth work is my primary partner and the most important thing, and I think that transformation also helped me to get to a place where I had both the courage, because I think that had more to do with it than anything, to say, well, I'm going to leave this world that I know, and I'm going to try to go into a world that is uncharted. And the day that I heard Angela Davis and Fania Davis speaking about restorative justice as a way of addressing harm and healing on 2007, Taylor Memorial Methodist Church in West Oakland, I knew that that was where I wanted to direct my attention. I wanted to use the public interest design movement to do that. Oh, I can take my mask off.
Yes.
Revolution! I wanted to use public interest design way of practicing, saying that, everybody deserves good design. The built environment matters. And I was able to start to make that leap, and I quit my job in 2011 to just do this work full time. With lots of people saying it wasn't possible, you won't be able to build a firm doing that, what are you even talking about? It was just, but there were also a lot of people who also was supporting. And so it's been since 2011, where are we now, 2022, 11 years of building towards this, and it's just incredible to be here, right? I thought, okay, well, this probably isn't gonna work out, and I'll live in my dad's basement. And that could still happen, But it's amazing, right? It's amazing we're having this conversation today, that this is even something we can even talk about. It was unheard of. It was unheard of not that long ago. So it's a blessing to be here with you.
Amazing, setting that intention and seeing where the trajectory goes. So Damar, tell us now a bit more about your project. Where did the impetus for this project come from? What do you hope it accomplishes? Tell us just even about it.
Sure. So my project was on the case of Alton Sterling, and one, just saying that name, right? When I was told the name of the person who I would be, doing my project after, I remembered him. I remembered his case in particular, but it was challenging because I didn't realize how many faces of murdered black people that I would need to go through to get back to the details of his case. And really now, when I was talking to other people about it, I would say, "You remember Alton Sterling?" And people like, yeah, Ahmad, yeah, I remember Ahmad. I'm like, that's not him. And, you know, so I'm realizing that they don't remember all of these cases. And at first I was kind of upset, but you can't be, because there are so many cases of Black people being killed by these by police officers. So with my project, I was trying to figure a way to speak to the foundation of the issues, right? So, and I wanted to do that through kind of going through sections of what could be a home, right? And when I was looking at homes, I wanted it to be kind of abstract. I didn't want anyone to be able to actually, when I thought of putting Alton's space in a room, right? I thought of how the media does Black men and women when they're killed by a police officer, and how it's almost like you die two deaths. You're killed, and then afterwards they're gonna bring up everything you've ever done, and they're gonna put it out there, and it made me want to just protect whatever I could from Alton. So I didn't even want to put his image out. You know, I didn't want to, even though I wanted people to remember him again, I wanted them to see that he's a part of this large thing, you know, and so I wanted to, yeah, so basically outside is sections of homes. So you'll go through sections of Alton Sterling's home, and just so you know, Alton Sterling was killed about 6 years ago, and he was killed in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He was killed while selling CDs. That's what he did for work. Within 20 seconds of the officers arriving and getting out of their car, Alton was murdered and shot 6 times. So I think about moving quick, you know, I think about even the era of CDs, you know, when is the last time anybody used a CD, right? And when I started doing very manual processes, like discovering which CD, just placing CDs or seeing how to, I was remembering when I used to burn CDs, and that's what he must have been doing, you know, and to hustle. And so to die while doing your job, right, I'm thinking, how can you allow people through this home but still protect his image while diving into the facts of the case, like the foundation of the case, the structure of the case, why these things keep happening. So you only see images and facts on foundation or on framing. You see behind every blue wall of silence is the facts of the case and who actually is responsible for the death of Alton Sterling. There's plays on materials where we have a black facade, right? And at first I wanted to just put the homeless shelter that Alton was living in at the time that he died. And because I saw exactly how it looked, right? And it looked rough. It just looked, you know, you couldn't see through the windows or anything. And it just made me think of how he was probably perceived, you know, maybe he was perceived rough. And I started to want to play with that thought of, okay, we can have this facade that looks very rough, very hard, very cold, like people often think black skin is. And then we can play a game on it and put like this very smooth material that is warm and feels nice to touch and is soft. You won't know until you touch it. So really throughout here, I was trying to speak to, the facts of the case, of the sensitivity of a person who I do not know, who has a family who is still living, and trying to be respectful to them while looking at the systemic racism that has happened, not only by the officer who killed him, Blaine Salamone, but really kind of this timeline of continuous, injustices that are really done by Louisiana, the state who holds the most prisoners. So that's what I've been working towards with the project outside.
Thank you. And Deanna, yes, please. Deanna, share with us a little bit about some of the work that you have, or that Designing Justice that you have here. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. I think you're seeing a couple really artifacts of larger projects. You know, architecture can be very large, it can be very small. The small is equally as powerful as the big. And so out in the front is the mobile refuge room, which actually came out of a project where we're working with Black churches to try to take their assets and real estate and create spaces for reentry, folks coming home from prison. They're asset rich and cash poor, right? So this was a solution that we thought would help a lot of members in our Black communities. And out of that, working with systems impacted folks came the solution that folks were being crammed into spaces, 9, 10 in a room with a cot and a bedside table. It was unsafe. They're coming out of prison already suffering from PTSD, a lot of trauma, and moving into situations that were just as bad. And so with them, we were able to design, coming out of that project, the mobile refuge room, spaces that would provide dignity and privacy in transitional supportive housing. They were designed with systems impacted men and women. They were fabricated by systems impacted men and women so they could get living wage jobs in the digital fabrication industry. So it's the idea of stacking functions of both the sort of restorative economics and other types of assets that folks and communities really need. And then the shop that hopefully you're gonna get goodies at is a piece of our pop-up village, which there's also a video of, which was something that we led about how do we activate blighted space and bring resources to communities that they need. Everything from the bus that you see over there that brings GED and high school education, the women's mobile refuge trailer. These shops roll and pop up. We'll take over a whole block sometimes, and a small idea that started has grown to the point now that the pop-up village is not the pop-up pregnancy village, and we're working with UCSF's OBGYN to bring gynecological services, OBGYN services to pregnant mamas. We've been able to serve over 225 mamas and their families already using that same model. That we have a beautiful environment in the middle of the street. It pops up every month, and people can get services, get your hair cut, you can get massage, you can get acupuncture, right, in a beautiful space. So you're seeing a piece of that out there. And then, really looking at what we're calling our ecosystem of care, that this is the ecosystem of infrastructure we need to end mass incarceration. We need to close jails and prisons and repurpose them, and you're seeing examples of how that gets done. We need spaces for youth. We need spaces for survivors of violence. We need specialized education spaces. We need specialized housing. We need spaces for behavioral health, which you'll see over there on the table. And divergent and reentry spaces. So all of this constellation of stuff, just showing you some of that in the space as much as we can, just to give you a taste of that ecosystem and the prototypes that we need to create.
Thank you. One of the things I love is how rich and diverse the field of art, design, architecture is. And so even just in this conversation, playing with notions of scale, I'm hearing about a project that is just so intimate. It's so almost thinking about the interiority of space, of this person's life, right? And then I'm also hearing about models for changing our entire landscape, for serving hundreds of people, for changing systems. So all of that is possible, y'all, and all of it is here, and all of it is within all of us. But can you just each tell me a little bit about what do you see as the possible impact of your work, either your project or just architecture or the built environment in general? What are you hoping to achieve?
Should I take it first?
You go for it tomorrow.
This one I'll speak more in terms of my work in general than the project, but the project is obviously also part of my work. I don't think that the field of architecture is that diverse yet. I think that it's getting better a little. I mean, the last 5 years, 10 years, it's been getting a lot better. But I think that what I would like to impact is I would like for people to be able to feel pride in where they live. I believe that perception is a huge thing, right? And I think I've just been noticing how big of a deal the built environment and bad architecture or a lack of attention to certain neighborhoods what that can mean to the people who live there. You know, for example, Watts, where I have my main project, we're working on the community center in the Jordan Downs, as well as other projects that I'm spearheading alone. And we were looking at all these metal bars on every single window and door, and it's like 700 citizens here, right? Every time they come outside, or every time they look out their window, every time they come home, they are looking at themselves through metal bars, right? And you begin to think, what is the effects of that? You know, we know that there's already disproportionate numbers of Black people in prison, and we automatically equate it to all of these other things, and I've never considered how important our built environment could, or how much of a factor our built environment could be. If your home looks like a prison, how much easier is it for you to go to prison? You know, so if your home now makes you feel like a king, or makes you feel like you can do anything, or a queen, then what does that do? You know, and that's what I'm interested in speaking to with our culture, allowing Black culture to be this background, or this aid in perception and self-perception for Black people, hopefully. And that's how I'm kind of trying to unearth my Black aesthetic.
I don't even know where to begin on this one. This is like, it's a constant advocacy, right? I don't think people really understand what the built environment has done, right, to us. It is intense. Like, if you really look at it, right, the built environment is merely representing the ideas, beliefs, and values of those in power. That's what it's always done. You know, the highways that cut our Black communities in half, all the things Damar's talking about, why it looks that way, that was done on purpose, y'all. On purpose. Systemically, over centuries, right? And it continues to happen. And so when people want to ignore the built environment, or place doesn't matter, which I'm constantly trying to advocate for, I'm like, are you kidding me? Right? There's no greater concretization of structural racism than can be seen in the very built environment that's around us. Simply drive around. You'll see it. So it also anchors and ricochets and amplifies all of that, right? It hurts our health and well-being. We have higher rates of asthma. We have in Black communities, right? There's a ton of things it's doing to our minds and our bodies. Recidivism, you know, if you go back to a community that has no resources, you go right back. It's all about the built environment. I'm a little biased, but it's a big deal. And it cannot be ignored, and it has to be addressed. And the role of design and architecture in addressing the system is essential. And I think, you know, even today when we went to the Crenshaw Dairy Mart, right, you can see how when people have control of space and safe spaces to dream, the things that they can do are incredible, right? You can now expand and grow, and your wings can stretch, like all of that. And that's just one thing, right? We could be here all day. I can talk about a bazillion things that the built environment can do, and why it's critical and essential that we begin to address it. So, yes, I'm biased, but I'm also right.
So something that I didn't anticipate asking, but that I'm just experiencing here with both of you. With Damar, when you were talking about your project and the life that it was about, you know, just thinking about how that has actually impacted you really came to the surface for me. And then Deanna, you were talking about your own healing journey and that relationship. So starting with you, Damar, how has this work impacted you? What does it take of you to do this?
So maybe I've been working on this project for a while. At first, you're in the computer very heavy. You know, you don't start building until the end. And I didn't realize until maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I had someone helping me print out the individual list of people who've been murdered by the police ever since the death of Alton Sterling, which you can see in that CD case outside. And they were like, this is sad. And I looked at them, I'm like, yeah, it's sad as hell. And I didn't realize, you know, I can get in a work grind and lose communication or something like that, and I'm just grinding. But this put me in such a dark spot for months. I didn't know until she said that thing. She's like, this is kind of depressing. I don't know how you do this and work on this every day. I'm like, yeah, I don't, my work, when I'm looking at architecture, I'm celebrating Black. You can't, with a project like this, it's like, do I make something ugly pretty so you all can feel it? And, or do I say, nah, this is, oh, I almost slipped up a cuss word. This is a messed up situation, and it needs to look as it is, It's tough. It's tough to make decisions like that. It's tough to say, I don't want to dress this wall because this is the officer's wall. I'm not trying to celebrate his murder, or even on Alton's side, there was things I was just very careful of. I didn't want to go into because I never spoke to one of his family members. So all this stuff that I'm doing is off of research, like in-depth research, but I don't know certain things. So it was hard to toe that line and try to remain respectful and true and kind of stick to my values during the whole time. So it was tough.
Thank you for sharing. Dina, how's your work impacted you?
I don't have much free time, there's that. But I think the work I did on myself impacted the work more than vice versa. I mean, I'm grateful every day to be able to get up and come up with solutions. I want to talk about solutions. I want to look at the problem, and then I believe that we have what it takes. If we work together, if we work across discipline, we can come up with the solution to this problem. And it would take, I was just talking earlier, it's going to take every single one of us doing every contribution that we possibly have. And so I'm solutionary. Like, I get excited, right, about solutions. I want to hear a bazillion ideas, right? In our firm, we have values of abundance, right? It doesn't matter, we can't see the way forward. We don't know how we're going to get the resources. We go forward anyway, right? We go forward because we believe that it's possible, that there's a solution to be had. We actually have a physical dance we do called the Abundance. You really got to bring joy. You got to bring a little joy into it, right? Or else it really is hard, because we are working deep in community. We lose people, right? It's hard work. And so to be able to know that with the solution is at hand, that if we work in close collaboration community, we can do it that way. And that's not how I got to practice those early 20 years, right? There was none of that. So I'm transformed by the people we work with, by working with systems impacted people inside the institution, outside the institution, their communities of care, the amazing team that we have. I'm growing in ways personally that I never thought was possible for me. I'm a little obsessed with it, as you can tell, but it's true, right? The whole path is about expanding and growing so that we can step even more into it, right? I have to get better every day so that I can do the work even better for the people that I'm in service to. So it's critical.
Amazing, thank you. We are going to get to questions from all of you, but I think Mercedes is going to take us through. So this is my last question. You're both visual and visionary people, and so one of the things that I think is so hard is that we have never actually had full justice in our country in the ways that we have espoused. So help us think about that. What does success look like?
Oh, you do. That's not cool, Mom. That's a bomb. What does success look like? Honey, I want to live in a world where I drive into a Black community all the way across town and it looks just as beautiful and just as highly resourced as every other part of the city. I want to see that, I I want to live in a world, success will be, and I used to say this where, because I was really into designing restorative justice centers, right, where that was the primary way of addressing harm in our communities, that healing and care was the primary response to harm rather than what we're doing now. And that would be success for me. And I have to say, I am seeing it start to happen. I'm starting to see it in LA County, right? I'm starting to see some shifts in that direction. It's not going fast enough for me, but I think that the arc of justice is long and we're headed in that direction. And if we're all pushed behind it, it'll go faster, but that would be success for me. I'm really tired of having a situation to Marta. I'm really tired of going to Black communities and seeing them look the way they look and feel the way they feel when they actually didn't used to look and feel. I remember when I was a little girl going to visit my family in North Carolina, right? Everybody lived around each other. It was all Black community. And we've just been under attack. So that would be a transformation I'd like to see. And restorative justice is our primary way of addressing harm.
Thank you. Jamar.
Success looks like, all right, so I'll ask you this. Of course, nobody needs to answer, but I just want you to put it in your head. When you think of the hood or the ghetto, is there an image or something like is there something that comes to your mind, right? So you can take your 4 or 5 seconds and think of that. Is that good? Whatever you just thought of the hood, is it good or is it a negative connotation? Good, okay. So I think that not everybody thinks that. I think that too. But I think that success for me is the hood being described as or thought of as this beautiful architecture that describes and speaks to the people who live and work in that hood or in whichever hood you in, and that now we think of that beauty when we think of that word, when we think of these negative words that are often impacting Black and brown people actually living in these areas. And for that to happen, I think it's realistic. Right now, I graduated 2 years ago. And during my thesis, I tried to build a house within like 6 months. I never built a house. I never built anything past like a dresser. And the dresser has some drawers that wouldn't come all the way out, you know? And so I was thinking, yeah, I could get this done in a few months. And the end of the year hits. I probably got 4,000 of the 150,000 that I thought I needed raised, right? But today I can say that we have right below 300,000 raised to build a ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit that's going to function as an artist residency, a maker space for local artists, and have this very interactive fence along the front that includes framing for quarterly artists to have, or local artists to have quarterly exhibits there, for kids to be able to exhibit work there. We have a free public library that activates this side, which is right outside of the Watts Towers, which already deserves to be activated. And then the last portion is speaking to, again, resources that architecture can offer. We have over 40 different fruits, vegetables, and seeds that are being distributed that is using architecture as a resource, that's allowing architecture to make this community or just one homeowner more self-sufficient. And if you continue this idea, right, even just growing food across your fence line, and say that street of 10 houses all grow their own food on the front of the fence line, just 4 or 5 things. They don't have to think of themselves as living in a food desert anymore. They're thinking of themselves living in abundance. And they're thinking of, if I need something, I'm going right here or to my neighbor. And that's what I think is going to be when the hood is thought of, how I think of it and how highly I think of it, and how highly I think some of you think of it, that's success.